Hey there. It is still September 9th, 2015, Wednesday, Comic Book Day. You know the deal by now. Last video, we reviewed Swords of Sorrow, issue 5, Miss Marvel, issue 18, and Spider-Man Renew Your Vows, issue 5. This video, we're going to review the DC books that I picked up this week, starting with All-Star Section 8, issue number 4. And these books are getting in kind of, they've always been kind of hard to review because they're just so surreal. And I really enjoy that about them. I enjoy how surreal they are. This issue is no different. Um, just to do a recap, as you can tell on the cover, the special guest star in this one is Wonder Woman. And in this issue, after tearing down Section 8 for being terrible heroes, she gets bonked on the head, which reverts her to a state where she decides to join Section 8 for a while. And unfortunately, that doesn't go as well for Section 8 as they might have originally hoped. And I just love over here when she's telling them no for the recruiting thing. You just have Six Pack and like Roman Centurion armor, as if that was part of his plan to get them to join. Actually, they all are. I just noticed that they're all in like Centurion armor, and that's really great. I love that. But yeah, Wonder Woman gets bonked on the head, which kind of makes her regress to a very childlike state, which makes her want to join the team. All the entire team learns a little bit something about feminism, and we see how all the characters react to that. The Grappler is not a big fan of the idea of feminism. He's kind of a joke about the whole thing. Meanwhile, Six Pack and the drill guy, I forget his name, they're more for it. They're more understanding. And Wonder Woman just generally causes a ruckus. There's a wedding between Bueno Excelente and Guts. That's been in the making for a couple issues. And yeah, things just get crazy or continue to be crazy. And at the end, we're dealt with a little bit of maybe existential crisis, or a little more existential crisis from Six Pack, as he tries to remember who Sydney might be. Hint, hint, it's him. Yeah, just this book continues to be as surreal and weird and everything as it always has been, and I'm still really enjoying it for it. If you like surreal humor involving superheroes, then I'd recommend this book. It is kind of unlike anything else that DC is publishing right now. So it's weird and fun. So if you like weird and fun, Section 8. Next up is Action Comics number 44, Rise, what seems almost the conclusion of this arc that's been going on since the reboot, or the mini reboot here. We open with Superman in City Hall fighting the shadow creatures that he's been fighting throughout this arc, and we find out who their leader is, some woman named Wrath, who is feeding off of anger and using it to power her, and that's why she's fighting Superman, because the more Superman fights, the angrier he gets, and the more powerful she becomes, and that's kind of the main conflict of this book, is Superman has to defend himself and the neighborhood without fighting, because fighting only makes her stronger. Lee eventually gets infected by the Rage virus, and where does that happen? Yeah, Lee gets infected, so that's a bit of conflict over there. You have some really good work with this fight. Superman just throwing his weight around and trying to land some good hits in, while also trying not to get like too wrapped up in the fight, because that's what she wants. By the end of the book, Superman drives them away. Lee breaks out of her rage thingy majigger. And at the end, what like really kind of concludes this part of the story is Superman walks away. Throughout this arc so far, he's kind of went back to Metropolis, went back to his old neighborhood, and there's been some conflict because some people don't want him there. and he realizes, okay, I've caused enough trouble here. I've helped these people realize that they can take care of each other, that they have to support themselves. And now that they still don't want me here, it's time for me to leave. Time for me to hunt the real baddies around here. And then we catch up with Wrath a little bit at the end. Not as strong as an issue as a lot of the previous one was, but then again, I mean, this issue loses a lot of the kind of social commentary that's been going on. This was just pure out, all brawl sort of thing. So kind of a lull in the story. I think the next issue or 2 issues might be the end of this arc. And it definitely feels like a bit of a winding down, a bit of a, entering third act sort of thing by the end of this book. So that's pretty much that. Not all that plot heavy, mainly a big fight scene. We get a little bit of development with kind of how Clark is working with other people in Metropolis, especially Lee, who gets a bit of a more spotlight in this issue. Can't really complain about anything, but also not clearly a lull in the story. And next up, last up for this video, is Batman number 44 by Scott Snyder and guest artist Jock, who also teamed up with Snyder on Witches, which I really enjoyed. And this issue is very, very good. It is a one-shot, standalone flashback issue back to back when Bruce was Batman. This is only a year into Batman's career after 0 Year, and it follows Batman on a mission to basically find out what happened to this kid. How did this kid die? Batman finds a kid with 4 bullet holes in his chest, way outside of Gotham City limits, like a mile outside of Gotham City limits, or the former city's limits. I forgot exactly how. But he finds this kid outside the city, 4 bullet holes in his chest, but Batman deduces that he actually died from a 1,000-foot fall. And so Batman has to discover, how did this kid die? Who killed this kid? And we get the whole backstory of this kid and, working as Batman does, from the conclusion to the start. How did this happen? Who's to blame? Who do I punish, essentially, for this? And this takes us on a story through the Penguin, to the local gang, to eventually it goes to Bruce Wayne, and it follows the story of kind of how it's really deep, actually. It's really like the kind of a story that has been tossed around, but that hasn't really been fleshed out until now, and that's what is the impact of Bruce Wayne's philanthropy on Gotham City. So what we find out, working backwards, is that this kid lived in a bad part of town. He lived in the Narrows, which is one of Gotham City's slums. And he was working with the Penguin. So Batman interrogates the Penguin, and it's a really good interrogation scene. Well, first we have the scene where Penguin tries to electrify him, and Batman he grounded his suit, so the electricity just bounces around him, and it's this really great scene. And this book has just great art, as to be expected by Jacques. This art, it's just fantastic all the way through. You also have just the opening page here, Batman on the scene, just some really great art all throughout this book. But as I was saying, Batman interrogates Cobblepot by hanging him from a blip and have the birds eat the wire, holding him up. And we also, through this book, we get clips of newspapers reporting what's going on in Gotham. And so at first, Penguin was like, I don't know this kid. Why are you attacking me? You should be attacking, why are you dealing with me when the real criminals are the lobbyists and the millionaires who are, working with the gangs and paying off law enforcement? So we get a clip of that in the newspaper. From Cobblepot, Batman goes to the local gangs, and it turns out that the kid Peter was working with Cobblepot in order to force the local gang out of his neighborhood. And so then Batman goes to investigate the bodega that he was working out of, because it's his father's bodega and everything. So the kid was working at his father's bodega, and Batman investigates the scene, and then we find out about the gang and how the local gang came to be, and it was part of a neighborhood watch program that got out of control. And then from the local gang, we find out more about the kid. And so from the local gang, Batman goes to the kid's sister, the kid's dad in the hospital, and all that, trying to find out, okay, what drove this kid? What was the impetus for this kid to do what he did? Actually, no, I was wrong. Before that, the gang says he didn't shoot the kid, but a cop shot the kid, and so we have Batman interrogate the cop who shot this kid and put the 4 bullet holes in the kid's chest. And we just keep on going backwards and backwards to find out, how did this kid get wrapped up in all of this? What caused this kid to reach out to Cobblepot, to go to his father's store, to work with the local gang and all that, to do all this. And it all eventually leads back to Bruce Wayne. You have to follow the money, so to speak. And it turns out that Wayne pumped a lot of money into this neighborhood trying to recover it, but that caused, of course, property prices to go up, which meant that his father couldn't pay the rent, and now that his father's in the hospital, he needed someone to run the deli, and he couldn't do it by his bodega, so he couldn't do it by himself, and so this eventually, we find out, led the kid in his first step to contact Mr. Bloom in order to get the power to protect his neighborhood, essentially. And so we find out just all of this leading back to Bruce Wayne, leading back to Batman, and we have this great moment at the very end of the story where Bruce is putting all this together, is reconciling all of this with himself, and we get the newspaper clippings and kind of going through, what is Batman thinking about, and how can he prevent this? Because he can't prevent it by pumping money into the system, because that just escalates prices, that pushes people out, pushes people away. And then at the end, I'm sorry I'm spoiling this whole book, but it's very, very good. I'm not going to spoil, I guess, the very last page. But at the end, Batman realizes that it's not enough to be philanthropic, that in Gotham City you need a Batman. And he finds out that Batman is more than just, interrogating people, beating people up. That Batman has to care for Gotham, and how he goes upon that by the end of this book. And it's just such a good story, such a good Batman story, and then it gets to the heart of, why is Bruce Wayne Batman? Why is this the way, dressing up in a bat costume, beating people up? What else does Batman do to help Gotham that Bruce Wayne couldn't? And we get to the heart of that right here, that, Bruce Wayne can solve a lot of problems, but you still need Batman to solve problems that Gotham, that the money can't solve in Gotham. So it's just, it really hits something deep in the Batman mythos. It hits something kind of very primal to the character. It plays with the Bruce Wayne Batman dynamic again in terms of how each of them helps the city. And just, it's a really personal story. Throughout the story, the story follows one kid. It follows one mystery. It's a very simple, why is this kid dead? It's not a big supervillain story. It's not a gang war story. It's, this one kid. What led this one kid to wrap himself up in all of this? And then when Batman discovers everything and realizes, okay, so how do I prevent this? If I can't prevent this as Bruce Wayne, how do I prevent this as Batman? And at the end, we see Batman become, this is still year one Batman, and then we see him become the sort of Batman that we see in later books. So very good story, very heavy stuff for a Batman story, really kind of getting into Batman and Gotham. You have this great narration, actually, and that's something else I wanted to point out. The little gray boxes here, the narration boxes, aren't Batman. They're a third person. So we're not getting Batman's monologue through here. We're getting a third person describing Batman's method. How does Batman work, from, what's his process going through Gotham, going through all of these steps, piecing together this mystery. And it's just very well done, very expertly crafted, gets right to the heart of the issue. And just a really good one-shot, a really good Batman story. Just Scott Snyder really continuing to blow everything out of the water here. Can't recommend it enough. And that is the end of this part of this week's comic book reviews. Still left on the docket, we have 3 indie books. as well as my Wicked and Divine review up to this point, up to issue 14. So if you're interested in Wicked and Divine, pay attention, keep your eye out for that video. And if you're interested in other indie books, that is coming up soon-ish. But thank you for watching this video. If you like this one, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you want more of these videos, if you like them enough. Comments, anything whatsoever, feel free to leave them down below and I will try and get to them. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you'll join me for some more comic book reviews later on.